After 10 months of closure, academic activities are now about to resume in Nigerian public universities. The Academic Staff Union of Universities has finally decided to suspend its prolonged strike. ASUU President, Professor Biodun Ogunyemi, said the decision was to go back to classrooms was based on the agreement reached with the federal government, and that the committee had been set up to monitor implementation of the agreement. However, he warned that if the government fails to fulfill its own part of the agreement, ASUU will resume the strike. The current strike began on March 23rd, and students of Nigerian government-owned universities have lost the entire academic year due to long dispute between the government and lecturers. Ogunyemi said it is also agreed that no ASUU member should suffer any loss of deserved benefit as a result of participation in the strike. Adesua, would you call this, because for me, this reminds me of, Dr. Abati, I know you're very vast in Haitian history. This reminds me of Pyrrhus, Pyrrhus of Epicus. His famous fights with the Romans, and finally he's got his victory. But when you look at the loss he made before getting that victory, that gave rise to the word called the Pyrrhic victory. Mm-hmm. Isn't this a Pyrrhic victory on the part of ASUU, looking at the loss incurred already?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it comes as a big relief. 9 months, a whole academic session has just been wiped out, just like that. Several meetings between government and the negotiator. The negotiator in this case is Dr. Chris Ngige. I think for me, the big takeaway from it is Dr. Ngige saying that he would never provide an excuse for ASUU to go on strike again. That, for me, is a declaration by the federal government that the agreements that have been reached will be met. And these agreements are centered around two specific agreements. The agreement that was reached in 2009, the ASUU FG agreement of 2009, and the memorandum of action of 2013. And the key issues were properly spelled out in the press release that was issued by the president of ASUU, academic freedom and autonomy, revitalization of the university system, the payment of earned academic allowances, or what is called EAA, and the integration of that into the budget, the annual budget, ensuring, a revitalization of the university system, visitation panels to be set up for the universities, the proliferation of state universities to be checked, general standards to be raised, right? What was then added to that in the course of the negotiations was the controversy over IPs and the university teachers insisting on UTAS, Transparency and Accountability Scheme, that they proposed as the payment system for university teachers, instead of university teachers being part of the general run of the payment scheme IPs that has been insisted upon by the federal government. Now, we have it on good authority from the ASUU president that on Tuesday, which was the last meeting, the agreements, they were able to reach very concrete agreements with Dr. Ngige saying, look, they've also agreed that one, university teachers should go back to school by January, even before January 18. They should adopt virtual teaching. The strike should also be suspended. And it is on the basis of that that strike was suspended this morning at 12:01 a.m. By ASUU, Thursday, Christmas Eve. What remains, however, is that ASUU is saying that this suspension of the strike is conditional. Conditional to the extent that if government does not meet those agreements, does not fulfill those agreements, 30 billion revitalization fund to be paid by January, and it gives the timelines, that there are specific timelines between now and February. And if by February, federal government reneges on the agreements reached, then of course, ASUU will have no option but to go back on strike. An implementation committee has also been set up to look at all of these issues. But what is even more painful is that just as ASUU is suspending a strike, even on a conditional basis, other unions within the system, NASU, SANU, they are raising their own issues, and you could have a situation whereby the university teachers go back, other staff within the university system will not go back, and then we'll be back to square one. So I think we should call on the federal government, whatever other negotiations they have with NASU and SANU all of that should also be concluded, because teachers alone cannot go to the classroom. They need the other stakeholders within the university system for our universities to run. Well, the parents whose children have been at home for 9 months, well, they will feel relieved. Now we have been told that they should fast-track the academic calendar. When you fast-track the calendar, are we not going to lose something in terms of quality of instruction? Because these students, they've been at home for 9 months. Now you say you will rush them, as we say in Nigeria, through 9 months that have been lost, a whole academic session. And what happens, as we have seen in the past, is that you could have a whole semester packed into just 6 weeks. So something, is lost in that regard. That relates to your point about Pyrrhic victory. And many of these university teachers, we hope that all of them will return, because I hear that some of them have opened beer parlors, some are, selling gari, some are into rice farming and all of that.
Dr. Baji, what about the ones in Ethiopia?
There's something,
Ethiopia.
You gain something, you lose something.
What about the ones in Ethiopia?
Brain drain. There's also the effect of brain drain. Many have left. Yeah. They've looked for work in greener pastures. Okay, that's more dignifying, right? Rather than beer parlor. Yeah. But this is the fact. I saw a woman, a senior lecturer in a university, a paper did a story on us, selling gari, cassava flakes. Okay. Yes, just to keep body and soul together.
I mean, what's there to add? When the minister yesterday, Minister Ngige, described this as a win-win situation for everybody, I wonder if he factored in the students as also winners in this, because I think they are the biggest losers in all of this. Because while this was going on, their counterparts at the private universities continue to learn despite COVID-19 pandemic. So something has to be done about the curriculum. Yes, there's that issue of, do we rush them and miss out on quality? But a whole 9 months, what is going to happen to the curriculum? Something has to give.
I mean, that's why I call it the Pyrrhic victory to start with, because when you look at all of this, everybody has lost. And when you count the effect of the losses, I mean, it's so sad. Because in all of this, too, we had NSAS. Let's not forget that. When you count the effect of the losses, it's so sad. I mean, I just want to pick your brain, guys, on NANS now saying that further agreements, they should let them in on further agreement, that they too want to be part of further agreements, as well as the federal government. What's your take on
what
NANS?
Further agreements exactly? Can they be specific? But again, to the point of virtual learning, we all have a sense of how the system is. I don't know how that can be practicalized. It's easy to say we can implement virtual learning, but I don't see how that will work in public universities in Nigeria. I just can't fathom it.
Great point.
Well, I think we should be able to reach a point whereby the school calendar is predictable. I mean, I know a parent who said he has a child in a private school and a child in a public university. The one in the private university has gone ahead to even take a master's degree. The one in the public university is still hoping against hope that she will be able to complete her education. And of course, the long-term effect is the psychological damage. The fact that, many of these students in the future will just look back and imagine and remember how they lost a whole year, to labor dispute between ASUU and other unions and the federal government.
There was a
As for NANS, don't let us go there. We'll spend the whole day on NANS.
I know.
NANS where, some serious students are fighting over the leadership of NANS. Heavily factionalized, heavily politicized.
All right, let's go to the next story, guys, all right? And save that joke as well.
I will.
The school boys were kidnapped from the government science secondary school Kankara in Katsina State by suspected bandits on December 11. I've given more insight into the development that led to their release of their captors. Speaking to Wall Street Journal, some of the boys narrated how they allegedly were thoroughly beaten by the bandits and that ransom was paid to the kidnappers before they were freed. The narration conflicted with that of the federal government, which had no ransom was paid. On Tuesday this week, senior special assistants to President Muhammadu Buhari on media and publicity, Madam Garba Shehu, said rescuing of the 344 schoolboys from their captors who took them to a forest in Zamfara State was facilitated by repentant bandits. He also reiterated an earlier statement by Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, that the federal government didn't buy freedom for the people. So the report yesterday on Wall Street Journal quoted 3 of the 344 boys as saying in the interviews that the kidnappers told them that ransom had been paid for their release, which a person was familiar with the kidnappers' negotiation with the government said a sizable sum had been paid for their freedom. 8 of the freed students, boys as young as 13, they reported were forced to eat raw potatoes and bitter cargo leaves to survive. They were seldom allowed to rest and sleep on rocky grounds. You see, this is another clear case of stories. I don't even know how to call it. Should I call it the tragedy of commons, or what is even happening here? They said ransoms were not paid. We're hearing repentant bandits. We're hearing, military action. Everybody's just claiming victory in this. But now we're hearing the boys say ransom. Who are we to believe?
I wish I knew the answer to that question, but that in itself is a major problem, where information is not properly given, is not properly passed, is not timely given. This is what happens when you leave a vacuum, and so everybody, makes up stories to fill up the space. Some governments have a clear position on paying for ransom for kidnapping. It's a no-no. They do not do it. But I think there's also the debate of human rights here. So if you have children, such as we've seen in Kankara and in Katsina in general, being kidnapped by who we're not even sure of, bandits who have become more vicious, just as vicious as Boko Haram, would you also maintain your position of we do not pay ransom? Obviously, some human rights organizations will tell you no. I mean, the position will change to say the lives of these children is more important than the policy of a government who says we do not pay for ransom. And I do not think anybody should be ashamed that, we have paid ransom to release these children. The only problem with paying ransom for kidnappers is that it fuels the vicious circle for, the kidnappers to come and do it over and over again to strengthen their operations. But we need to be able to handle information handling, information gathering, is very important and is key for any government. And I think that that's an aspect that this administration, wherever you look, especially at the federal level, has been poorly handled. Information handling has just been terrible. So if they paid for ransom, I think there are ways to go about it. And Dr. Abati has been in government, and I'm sure he has done a lot of those. How to handle information properly, that it doesn't get misread, somehow along the way.
When you said a lot of those, Dr. Abati, I don't want to tell you where my mind went. When she said a lot of those before paying of ransom, I'm like, no.
Anyway, I'm tempted to believe the version of the boys, because the boys were the ones with their kidnappers, and they must have been engaging them. But we also do not expect that government will come out openly and say that we paid ransom.
Yes.
I mean, governments don't tell you everything. And the standard excuse is to talk about national security reasons. Although as journalists, we insist on our right to know. The government talks about the need to know. But we were all very relieved. I described this as the biggest Christmas gift ever from the Buhari administration so far, because of the tension that the abduction of these boys created. And when they were released, it was a lot of excitement. And I think that the last time we discussed it, I even said, well, whether they paid ransom or not, we thank God for the survival and the release of the boys. Now, governments in situations like this often also engage in what they call backroom negotiations. And it's not the details, all the details of the backroom negotiations that they will bring to the public in order not to appear to be weak. It may look like a sign of weakness for government, a sitting government, to be acceding to the demands of negotiators. But, the end justifies the means. In this particular case, the boys have been released, they are safe. But when you read the details of the story, I'm more concerned about the fact that these children were subjected to extreme dehumanization. They were forced to eat raw potato. They were fed with leaves. I mean, that kind of, harassment, torture has already affected them. We talked about counseling. We talked about, psychosocial support for them. Some of them are even saying that they don't want to go back to school. And that if they were to go back to school, these kidnappers will come back and, kidnap them again for ransom, for business. Because what these boys are telling us now is that, look, kidnapping is big business. There is banditry, there is terrorism, but there is also the political side to it. There's also the business side to it. And the more profitable it is, the more attractive it's likely to be to the kidnappers.
Yes.
So every step should be taken to provide necessary support for these children and to ensure that they are encouraged to return to school. I suggested it that part of the Safe School initiative, one of the plans, is that students who are traumatized like this, they can be relocated to other schools so that they don't go through that post-traumatic disorder of returning to the environment where they've been scarred. Yes. So, and then again they said, the kidnappers, were beating them, they subjected them to torture. I mean, when you read the story, it's so painful. But we thank God that they survived it, they've been released, but we must mobilize support for them, help them,
and
support
really
their parents also.
Yeah.
And also the communities. And then government has a responsibility to keep our schools safe.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Really very important. And it's quite very sad that only 24 hours after that, there was another attempt made. But we thank God that it didn't result in kidnapping of those people in Islamia school. But that's all on news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Ruth Zudiri, Michael Wilson, Adesu Amoro, Aaron Akerojola to give us updates on Africa global business, COVID-19 and sporting activities. Do stay with us. On the Rise News channel. Let's quickly go to Rotus this morning. Rotus, everything business. Let's talk.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Deswa. Good morning, Doctor. Yeah, so it's Yuletide season, and we're looking at retail sales. I'm just wanting to make the case that Nigeria needs monthly retail sales data. I like the retail sector. Who doesn't? There's lots of interesting data points and things to observe. So this is from Abi Owolawi, our ICE correspondent, a report that she put together, where I like how she contrasted the formal sector with a luxury retail business owner with traders, street traders who are in the informal sector. So she spoke to both of them about the post-pandemic Christmas period, what their outlook is like as far as them expecting the type of sales that are going to be coming in, how the lockdown has affected each of them, and it was a great contrast. So what I'm advocating for, and the Bureau of Statistics has done some great work. They give us monthly COVID-19 socioeconomic data, they give us inflation, they give us GDP, but for the retail sector, it would be nice to get monthly retail sales data in Nigeria, telling us whether it's, the clothing go up or down on a month-on-month basis. Alcohol sales, you can drink sales, you can get that from the breweries based on their financials. But rather than pouring through their financials, it would just be nice to do a survey. The same way the Purchasing Managers Index survey is done by the Central Bank of Nigeria, where the central bank talks to manufacturers. What are your factory orders like? What's your employment levels like? And then you can gauge PMI. There's a 50-point threshold. If it's over 50, it's an expansion. If it's below 50, it's a contraction. So this was a really good report on her end, but we've got to depend on anecdotal data and then talking to the retailers themselves to gauge how sales are going to be. Then, of course, using inflation figures to see where inflation is, using other data points to try and piece together what's going on in the retail sector. But the retail sector in Nigeria, very, very interesting, and it's a space where there's a lot of data that we can mine, especially during this period, during the Yuletide, which is expected to be depressed. It would be nice to have some numbers. If you look at U.S. retail figures, just as an example here, under the red arrow, in the month of November, retail sales in the U.S. contracted, I think, by 1.1%. Anything below that line is a contraction. You can see back in March and April, there were big contractions of, I think, 8.2% and about 14% in March and April due to the lockdown. Rebounded in May and June. Then they've kind of slowed down since then. The latest round of lockdowns in the United States, the cold weather, restaurants closing shop, businesses, consumers being a little afraid of being infected, that's affected retail sales. And you can now piece together what the retail sector looks like. Even in South Africa, I can take a look at South Africa here. This is year-on-year retail trade sales growth. So the red line is a trend line look at the global economic crisis of 2008, 2009, you can see the red line falling. That is, sorry, the blue lines are the monthly sales data in South Africa, and then that red line is your trend line, just following it. So you can see how economic activity affects retail sales. So South Africa, I didn't want to just keep it to the United States. I also wanted to show that, of course, even in Africa, we've got African countries that provide retail sales data and show how economic activity affects the spending power of individuals that go out to the retail shops to go and spend. So it would be nice if we had, monthly retail sales data for Nigeria, just to keep a gauge. Because again, we've got a big retail sales sector, big formal sector, big informal sector in Nigeria. And I've got links to Dr. Yemi Kali, the statistician general of the Bureau of Statistics. So I want to try to urge him to get that done. It costs money to do all these surveys, but hopefully you can get it done. Then real quick, transportation. Anecdotally, it looks like volumes, interstate travel volumes are down. As far as the number of people at the parks, motor parks, getting into buses and going to different parts of the country to celebrate Christmas with family, because of course, obviously the targeted lockdowns, this second wave that we're seeing. Even me driving down here to the studio this morning, I remember Christmas Eve of 2019 were long lines of people that were piling into buses, these different interstate travel businesses to get going, to travel for the holidays. But we've seen the cost of airfare spiking. We've seen, of course, people pulling back because, cost of goods and services are increasing. So people are being a lot more conservative about their spending. So obviously, because of where we are in the economy right now, interstate travel is down compared to 2019. So it looks like it's going to be a cautious 2020 with respect to Yuletide spending, and that's pretty much our update for today.
I mean, Rotus, you just hit the nail on the head, and it's really important. One thing we have a big debt of is data in this country. And it's really important we do those things. And I've always, argued the fact that we should make our data more macro. We should make it go more to the people. We should be able to get those retail numbers. We should be able to even see supply chains, numbers of supply chains for groceries around the country and things like that. Because that's what really makes up the economy. Those are the numbers. It's not the grand, big, picturesque number we see. That is accumulation of everything. Because even if we even do that, Rotus, it's going to help us effectively get near good, accurate numbers when it comes to GDP recording.
Right.
And it has to be said, because we don't make all this capturing enough. And when we put a side-by-side analysis there, anecdotal evidence shows that things are not, moving well in the economy, maybe as regards last year. Because when you even look at it, COVID-19 lockdowns and restrictions everywhere have hampered all of this. People can't travel as much as before because of these restrictions. We can't have a dirty December that Lagos State said, put in a lot of money. This time last year, Lagos State was already planning a New Year Day party in like 6, 7 locations in the state. We can't have that any longer. I think Lagos State said in funds over close to 30 or 40 billion came into the economy in December alone. Money exchanging has in the economy. We can't have all of that. But like you said, it's really evident that we should have all of this data, compare, numerous, and also we should do more robust work on composite price index. I want to see a lot of that. Because when we check the composite price index, we see the way prices have increased over the years. Right. I'd like to know what was the price of Gary in 2017, what was the price of a Congo of Gary now, that's a measuring scale, a local measuring scale here, or a Derica of rice in 2017, what's the price now? Because when we can track this at composite pricing, then we can start to move a little bit forward as regards to proper economic planning.
The Bureau of Statistics does have a monthly food price watch, so they do look at like a kilo Gary rice and so on. But again, it could be more in depth. So your point is well made.
And Nairametrics also does that on a regular basis, giving us
exactly.
Now, but the point you make about retail sales, I think, is very important, and I hope that the relevant agencies are listening to you. Because retail sales represent a major economic indicator. In the US, retail sales are collected, the data is collected on a monthly basis, note it, by the US Bureau of Census. Right. Okay? And that data, is used to measure the health of the economy, the pulse of the economy. You recall that in June, when the UK decided to reopen businesses, Prime Minister Boris Johnson came out and was urging the British to keep the tills ringing.
Yes.
And the slogan at the time was spend, spend, spend.
Yes.
Because if you spend, you generate activity within the economy. Stakeholders are happy. However, gathering the data is not as easy as it may appear to be. But we can start, as you have recommended. I mean, first, in-shop sales, out-of-shop sales.
Yes.
How do you track all of this? And here, where our economy is dominated majorly by small and micro businesses, owners of which do not necessarily trust government or government agencies. So it may be very difficult, to create a framework. But, given the importance in relation to GDP, in the U.S., retail sales alone account for about 2/3 of GDP. So it's something that we need to track. So I hope Dr. Yemi Kale listened to you this morning. Indeed. And will probably initiate the process or whatever any other agency. Now, on transportation.
Yes.
A few years ago, I mean, you were comparing 2019 to 2020. But a few years ago, by now, Christmas Eve, Lagos will be almost empty.
Right.
I mean, I'm just exaggerating now because, there will be no traffic. People will have gone to their villages. Now, you are saying, well, we have the effect of COVID-19. Yes, that is true. But there's also, to follow on the anecdotal plane that you touched on. The truth also is that there is the challenge of security. People don't want to go to their villages because people are afraid that they will be kidnapped. If you leave Lagos, you go to your village, some people may suspect that you have brought money to come and spend. So I see a lot of people staying back in Lagos. I mean, each morning when I see traffic, I say, what are these people still doing? Let them go to their villages so that they allow some peace. But of course, you could say, what am I also doing in Lagos? Yeah, so this is a challenge we have. There is a problem of insecurity. And then the roads are bad. Very bad condition. And to even add to that, on the 28-29 kilometers, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is going to be shut down by kilometer 16. Yes. And, nobody wants to go through all of that stress. So people are staying back. But we just hope that also the crisis of poverty, will also be something that will disappear at some point. If you don't have money, if you have spent the whole year more or less under lockdown, I mean, your first priority is just to survive, not to go and distribute money through the extended family system chain. In the village.
Rotus, let me give you a quick takeaway question. Is there a possibility that NIPS can track POS transactions to be able to gather economic data of grocery sales across board? Are there laws against it? Can they use that and share with the statistical company, as a statistical body? Is there a possibility of that? Because most of these transactions are point of sale transactions or online transactions in the grocery stores. So can they submit those data? And definitely when they have a POS machine, then they have a partnership with us because, I mean, you register as a company to be able to get a POS machine. So can they use that to track economic fecundity?
They can. In fact, very quickly, the central bank is even utilizing NIBS to now track foreign exchange remittances so they can see exactly what forex is coming in. But the thing is that if you look at Abi Owolawi's reports that she did for us, where she was contrasting the formal sector and informal, largely, I mean, they're using POSs, but largely cash-based, so they can capture it, but they wouldn't get the whole picture. Well, so you have to account for cash.
We'll take away for you, Rotus. I hope that, retail shop owners will not think if we start gathering data, this is an attempt to increase their tax returns.
I can imagine.
The
distrust is so much. We'll move on to Michael Wilson. But you are correct. Even me, if I own a retail shop, I will feel the same.
You'll come and give your data so that they can increase your tax.
I can imagine. Yeah. Too much taxes, nothing in return. Thanks a lot, Rotus. Michael Wilson, great to have you from Doma in London, England. No, from Doma, England, I should say. Good morning, Michael.
Hampshire. That's right. Good morning. So basically, overall, then a bit of a pickup as far as the financial markets are concerned after that torrid week. Headlines have started to appear that the United Kingdom and the European Union have reached a provisional Brexit trade agreement. I'll give you more detail of that in a second. United States jobless claims just the 800,000, much lower fall than forecast. So that tended to do markets quite well. And this has been enough really to green light quite more gains gains for Asian equities really overnight, and they're also apparently quite relieved that some kind of Brexit agreement is nigh. Not necessarily there's a direct knock-on effect to Asian markets as a result of this, but presumably something to do with trade negotiations, which are fairly tortuous. So the Nikkei up about 0.5%, Kospi up nearly 1%. Alibaba concerns weighing on the China market. I'll give you more of that in a moment. Shanghai Composite about 0.25% higher. Wall Street certainly believing, like with Asia, something is actually happening, and there's been a bit of rotation there as far as markets are concerned. So basically, we'll come on to the US markets in just one second, but I need to give you this first of all about Jack Ma, as you know, Alibaba's owner. That Chinese authorities are now investigating that because of monopolistic behavior. Alibaba shares fell over by 5% this morning, and mainland equities and also Hong Kong equities will probably pause for thought about that. And more aggressive regulation coming from maybe the United States, well, almost certainly the United States, certainly from the EU, certainly from the UK, but also now Russia apparently wanting to clamp down on high-tech companies. So 2021 will be quite interesting. Right. To the detail then of the United States, and President Trump pardoned his son-in-law's father. He vetoed the defense spending bill, threatened to veto the combined fiscal stimulus government funding bill for 2021. As I was saying to you yesterday, his main gripe appears to be that payments to Americans are actually too small. An odd thing for a man whose Republican sentiments are probably quite strong, but there we are. Maybe we see here the final throes of somebody who is still not admitting that he actually lost the American election. So this bluff and double bluff in the United States, but equity, energy, precious metals all rose. The US dollar fell, and it was a sort of buy everything day yesterday. It could be that there will be some kind of fiscal penalties for all this in the new year. Remember, we've got the Georgia doubleheader Senate runoff in the first week of January, and that'll decide control of the Senate. And so it may be that Republican senators don't want to be tarred too much with being mean in the Yuletide season. Who knows? But that's sort of thoughts. Now, as far as the UK and the EU is concerned, we are braced for a news conference any minute now. Just before I came on air, we were waiting for Boris Johnson to talk to Ursula von der Leyen, the EC president, just to sort of talk through any other details. I understand that the details are still a bit stuck on species of fish and so on. Now, this may not sound a lot to you, but it's quite important if you're doing a trade deal. And even the European Commission spokesman has just tweeted to say that the talks have been continuing and some kind of result has been actually reached. So that's seen Brexit, seen sterling roar back into life, rising to 1.34 to 1.35 against the dollar, and it's risen also in Asia. This announcement comes actually, just in the nick of time. Basically, there are still thousands of trucks marooned either side of the channel, 6,000 in Kent as we speak, and it is a bit resembling a sort of stay-at-home wartime blitz. Fortunately, I'm not old enough to remember the Second World War, but some of the older people near where I live's parents are certainly saying that it's a bit like that. Basically, we're all staying at home and not spending that money. Okay. Commodities, oil markets recover very, very slightly because of all this, and gold has risen on a weaker dollar. And that, on Christmas Eve, is your global view.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Michael.
Michael, it looks like it's going to be a merry Brexmas after all.
Brexmas.
Yeah, and we'll have some marry sauce with our peeled prawns for lunch as well with the turkey too. So you're right there, yeah, certainly. A Merry Christmas, let's hope so.
Okay, real quickly, Michael.
Okay. Go ahead.
I want to talk about Jack Ma and financial. I wanted to ask the question yesterday, but we wanted to talk about this yesterday. But what's your thinking behind this? Because there is a thinking, there's a general thinking. We think that to a large extent, China is trying to stifle Jack Ma based on financial and what it will do to the banking system in China. He's talked against the state-owned banking system and all of that. What's your take on all of this? Is it good for a country to stifle its own billionaires, its own shining lights?
Well, let me add to that. One is Jack Ma on the verge of a personal downfall? And then how far is Beijing likely to go now that it's clamping down on Jack Ma and other tech moguls? You will recall that in November last month, the IPO was frustrated. And now the State Administration for Market Regulation is coming with these regulations that could frustrate the tech companies, Alibaba that you have mentioned, and also Tencent. And why now? Because these are companies that have been allowed, encouraged to rise to a level that they started boasting that they were too big to fail. And then as for Brexmas, is it true that it's the UK that has had to make more concessions, giving in to European demands?
I'll talk about the trade talks to start with first. Apparently, the document is, I think it's 2,000 pages long, which doesn't give anybody much of a chance to do much on Christmas Eve about that, to have a look at who's given what away with what. Both sides have undoubtedly made concessions about this. Who's made the most, don't really know, don't really care, to be honest. There are many more discussions to take place about this. And as I say, the detail will be in this 2,000-page document, which I don't have, the journalists don't have at the moment. There may be a news conference as we speak. It's certainly going to happen this morning. But so long as it's pushing forward, and so long as what's really happening is the fact that the EU is finally recognised that actually one of its major members can leave. And my goodness, it's been difficult. This has been going on for many, many years. We've been discussing it ever since I first started talking to you, almost on a daily basis. But now that it will also show to some of the recalcitrant countries in the EU that maybe these unelected bosses that it had can be convinced by a good trade argument. Who knows? As far as China's concerned, I think what's happening with Jack Ma says much more about China than it does about Jack Ma. What's happening is that weird thing about somebody having a business that people want to buy into. How strange is that? How good is that for a business? And it's getting bigger than China itself. If you remember, his financial company, which he first started many, many years ago, a long time ago, actually got bigger than the People's Bank of China. Now, China does not want that to happen. It doesn't want commercial, well, it wants commercial success from one side of it, but the communist take on China certainly does not want something which is getting bigger, too big for its boots, if you like.
Thank you, Michael.
And much too big for the Chinese administration.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. We need to take a short break now. And when we return, the morning show will continue.
For everything coronavirus, COVID-19 vaccines, everything about the pandemic, the most effective coverage, I should say, this year has been led by the Arise team. Amiable Adeso Amara. Thank you for all you've done, throughout this pandemic.
I feel like I'm receiving an award this morning.
You deserve the award.
Well deserved.
Thank you so much, Rufai. It's a whole team of people
at least, at last,
do this.
he composed a poem for you.
Well, that's right. That's right.
We're getting there.
My first poem, well documented. I'll make sure I have a clip of this after the show. Thank you, Rufai. So let's begin with the global figures. Unfortunately, COVID-19 does not respect holidays. In fact, it thrives better in holidays. This morning, we're recording 78.7 million cases, 1.7 million deaths, and in all continents as well. Remember that yesterday I'd mentioned that Antarctica as well has now recorded 36 cases. Away from those figures, 2 cases of a new, more transmissible COVID-19 variant linked to South Africa has now been identified in the UK, and that's according to the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, who revealed this during the press conference yesterday. Now, both cases are contact of people who traveled from South Africa over the last few weeks. As a result, flights from South Africa have now been banned from the UK, and more areas in the UK have entered restrictions, mainly in the east and the southeast of England. Meanwhile, Israel and Northern Ireland have also detected the cases of the UK virus variant. Away from the UK to Italy. In Italy, this is an interesting story. About 500 relatives of people who have died from COVID-19 from the hardest hit region of Lombardy have begun a legal action against regional and national authorities in Italy. They are seeking 100 million euros, that's equivalent of $122 million in damages. They claim that the authorities failed to take rapid action to prevent what could have been avoided. That's a national lockdown and the economic damage it has brought on them. They are also decrying that there's the lack of preparedness with Rome and Lombardy region having an updated plan in place to deal with a possible pandemic. So it's interesting to see how that will play out. The Prime Minister and other top government officials are party to those suits. Mexico, let's go to Mexico, where the country has become the first Latin American country to receive shipment of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Now, the arrival was met with ceremonies befitting of a VIP with flags, television cameras, and cabinet-level dignitaries lining the runway to receive it. Inoculation is to begin today in the country. It has reported 1.4 million cases and almost 120 deaths. Elsewhere, Canada has also become the second country to approve the Moderna vaccine after the USA. Finally, to Kenya, where there appears to be no end in sight in the... There you have it. That's in Mexico, where top dignitaries came to receive the Pfizer, first shipment of the Pfizer BioNTech COVID vaccine. But let's go to Kenya now, where health officials, health workers there say they will continue to strike to protest the lack of protective equipment, personal protective equipment, and health insurance for frontline workers fighting against the spread of coronavirus. In Kenya, more than 30 doctors, 29 nurses, and 10 clinical officers have died from the virus during the pandemic, and more than 2,000 other healthcare workers have also contracted the virus. They say they refuse to be used as slaves by the county and national governments. This portends danger for Kenya as they continue to battle the coronavirus pandemic there.
Well, I mean, quick comments on some of the issues you have raised, but before I go to the international stories, I think in Nigeria here, it is quite heartening that many of the states are already taking steps to impose, well, what looks like some form of restrictions. You know, many states have closed down pubs, restaurants, schools. You know, schools. Resumption date has been extended to January 18th. I think even in Ogun State is saying that if you are 60 and above, it's better you just stay at home. And, you know, you find Ekiti, the FCT, Edo State, Lagos State, all of these states, you know, are advising people to keep safe during Christmas and to have a low-key Christmas celebration. It's only Lagos State now that has imposed, you know, a penalty, you know, and I think other states should follow, should emulate the example of Lagos, because it looks like advocacy, you know, advisories do not quite work very well with Nigerians. People will still defy, but when they know that there is the possibility of a sanction, they are likely to obey it. And I think that that is a very good development. Now, as for Kenya, yes, the health workers, the National Nursing Association and the Kenyan Association of Doctors, pharmacists, and other health workers, they've been on strike. And they're talking about the same usual things that health workers talk about in Nigeria. Insurance. Yes. The big issue in that their strike is national insurance cover. But the counties, the spokesperson for the governors, they have a committee of governors. The chairperson is a guy called Oparanya. He's saying that, look, these concerns are federal government issues. They are national issues, not for counties. And some of those counties, you know, have taken the step of saying they will stop salaries in line with the Labor Relations Act. And some of them have, in fact, started recruiting new health workers. But we hope that this will be resolved because it's very disruptive. Patients are suffering. Many hospitals are empty. And that is likely at the time of COVID-19 to add more to the people's misery. However, even while Kenya has this problem, you know that Kenya has earmarked about, is it 10 million shillings or 10 billion shillings for getting COVID-19. They are part of the Astra COVID-19 vaccine. They are part of the AstraZeneca Oxford trials, even if it is just in phase 1 in Kenya. but at least you see a country that is thinking ahead in terms of ensuring vaccination for the people. And they also are going to order more, apart from the AstraZeneca, to make sure that Kenya is ready. And I think that, look, these are examples we should be monitoring to see how, Nigeria can also be prepared. In Italy, well, what we have here is a case of people trying to hold their government accountable. Lombardy is in the northern region, and Italy has a total of about 70,000 deaths so far.
Yes.
And the people, this committee, they said we must go to court committee. That's the name. Neo whatever.
Yes.
I don't want to speak Italian. Now, they are saying government was negligent and that they are holding government accountable, and everybody that died, the family should be given about 259,000 euros. That's what they are demanding.
Yes.
They wanted it to be a case of criminal negligence. They didn't succeed. Now what they have filed now is a civil lawsuit, to say government has a responsibility to have handled the COVID-19 pandemic much better. I hope we will also get to a stage in Nigeria whereby, ordinary people can come together and say, look, this government, you have failed us in this regard. We need to be compensated.
I mean, Dr. Bati, you're correct. Jean-Jacques Rousseau talked about it in his book, The Social Contract. That's supposed to be the level of social contract.
You hold your government accountable.
I do for you. I hold your government accountable. And concerning Kenya, I saw an interview. There was an interview on television on Kenyan TV, I think Citizen TV the other day, with the Minister of Health, where he talked about the glowing things about Kenya, and also talked about the corruption. Because the reason why those doctors are fighting back is the fact that there's been massive corruption, utilization of COVID-19 funds. But he said something. He said we've been able to use the COVID-19 fund to build more hospitals. We just had isolation centers. We didn't increase the number of hospitals. We didn't increase hospital infrastructure and the like. These are things we should also look at. And it's very, very important that we learn from that. Use it as a means of increasing and improving our healthcare system. I'll quickly go to Argentina. I'm not happy with what is coming out of Argentina. Argentina has approved for emergency use now the Russian vaccine that has not passed through third phase. Russia says it's happy about it because probably before now, it was only between United Arab Emirates and, now Argentina now has approved this, which is quite very disheartening because even if we want to go on the vaccine rush, we need to get to a level where we need to understand that this must pass through effective scrutiny process, and it has to be said. And just as a matter of footnotes too, China is now saying that they're going to set up a new vaccine factory in China that will be using the mRNA technology, the messenger mRNA technology to be able to, make vaccines. What it means is that if China turns out their vaccine, their cost will be less.